Welcome to this webinar titled Urban Roots, Forest and Farming. I know it's a public holiday yesterday, so I'm really grateful you guys can make it today. And I'm really looking forward to this topic today. So my name is Manus Reining, and I'll be your facilitator for today again. So welcome everyone. This webinar is brought to you by the Regenerative Collaborative. We are a non-profit organization which is focused on transforming our built environment into a regenerative one. We promote strategies and approaches that bring regenerative design and construction to life. We work collectively to inspire, educate, create awareness, and contextualize regenerative built environment approaches to the South African context. And we do this through really making an effort to showcase local projects, local people, and local companies that are aligned with our goal, which is creating a regenerative future. If you're not familiar with our webinars and you missed the last 4 years of webinars, you can go to our YouTube channel and you can find all the recordings there. So it's becoming a really nice database of topics that can help you in your regenerative future. Also, follow us on our socials. You can follow us on Eventbrite. That's our registration platform. So then you just get a notification if we put up a new event, and then you get an email in your inbox. Just make sure you just follow us as a thing and not the whole Eventbrite, because then they spam your inbox completely. So just follow us. LinkedIn, you can follow us there. All updates will be posted there, and obviously our YouTube channel. And I see we've got some nice additions to last month's subscribers. So yeah, if you have a moment, just click like or subscribe on one of these channels. It really helps us creating a following and creating a base to attract sponsorship. And today, it's very exciting. We actually have a sponsor in a long time. So this is really, really great. We've got Joburg ESG agency who is sponsoring this webinar and providing towards the CPD validation of this webinar. Founded in 2013, Joburg ESG agency is a sustainability and creative solutions practice that brings together horticulture, design, and ESG strategy to deliver measurable impact. Their work is all about helping organizations bring their sustainability commitments to life in an innovative and tangible way. They do projects like rooftop food gardens, which advances food security, support tenant well-being, and create employment opportunities. They do office plants and green installations designed to reduce carbon emissions, mitigate heat, restore biodiversity, and improve workplace wellness. And they also do interior landscaping with carbon sink plants, curated plant species that capture CO2, enhance indoor air quality, and communicate sustainability values in commercial spaces. From design and implementation to maintenance and reporting, Joburg ESG agencies enables their clients to prove real impact while transforming spaces into thriving living ecosystems. So we're very delighted to have Ash here on the webinar with us, who will also be doing a presentation in the second half of the webinar on urban farming, which is a topic at the heart of their mission and powerful example of how we can reshape our cities into greener, more resilient places. So please give me a big thank you to Joburg Agency for their support and making this webinar possible. If you want Ash's details, they're probably already in the chat. So if you need a company brochure, he's happy to share that with you. Today, we're talking urban roots, forest and farming, and we've got two amazing organizations here today. Sorry, I should have put these slides the other way around. Let me go to the next slide first, because Christopher is up first. We're having on our webinar Christopher Nash, Head of Restoration at GreenPop, I'm sure you guys all know who GreenPop is, but I'm sure Chris will also introduce it. It's a really cool organization. Christopher leads restoration initiatives at GreenPop, an organization renowned for its large-scale tree planting and ecosystem restoration across Southern Africa. With extensive experience in community-driven greening programs, he brings a wealth of knowledge and passion for the power of nature in our cities. His focus is on urban forestry, highlights how restoring biodiversity, improving air quality, and creating social value can completely transform neglected urban spaces into vibrant green lungs for communities. So I'm very excited to hear about his presentation, but before he's going to take over, I'm going to present Tumelo. He is sustainability specialist and plant installation artist, as mentioned at Ash ESG company that I just introduced. Tumelo is a horticulturist, artist, and third-generation farmer with more than 15 years of experience blending traditional agriculture with urban farming innovation. His journey began in Malaysia in 2007, where he gained hands-on knowledge of sustainable farming techniques, knowledge that has shaped his pioneering work ever since. Over the years, Tumelo has developed eco-friendly food production systems that merge artistic expression, community development, and regenerative farming methods. He has led numerous training programs focused on sustainable agriculture, advancing food security while empowering communities with resilient solutions. His expertise spans innovative irrigation systems, regenerative farming methods, and creative plant-based installations that reimagine how we can live with nature. Great. Two amazing personalities here from two really great companies. So with that introduction, I'm going to hand over to Chris. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to invite you to share your presentation with us in the coming 20 to 25 minutes.
Okay, great. Welcome everybody. It's a great honor to be connecting and sharing some of our work and our approach with you today. As I was introduced, I'm working as a programs manager, the head of restoration at the GreenPop Foundation. We're a local non-profit company established about 15 years ago with a very humble yet ambitious goal of a group of friends to plant 1,000 trees in Arbor Month. And the groundswell that campaign reached with offers of sponsorship and applications for under-resourced schools to receive trees, etc., made it clear that there's a real demand and a real need for tree planting. And since that early focus, we've developed into an international organization working across a few programmatic areas. One is forest restoration, another urban greening, environmental education, regenerative events, and also environmental consulting. I'm going to be focusing on our urban greening work, as well as referencing some of the lessons learned from our forest restoration and where they intersect. So, as many of you may know, Africa is the world's most rapidly urbanizing continent. Estimations between 2000 and 2030 is that urban population would increase by more than 700% over those 3 decades. As this happens, ecosystems and the essential natural assets they provide are under pressure. Some of the issues that we see in our cities is, especially in relation to climate change, is urban heat island effect, or the radiation off of hard surfaces, our apartheid legacy of spatial division and inequality, widespread pollution, as well as other risks of floods and droughts. And urban green spaces are essential to both ecological and social well-being. The benefits include regulating urban temperature, improving air quality, reducing stormwater runoff, improving water and soil quality. They help mitigate noise pollution, provide habitat for urban wildlife, and help combat climate change. As well as the community and psychological benefits that they improve mental and physical health, provide spaces for recreation and spirituality, and increase urban residents' sense of pride of place, community, and home. However, despite these benefits, many urban landscapes, particularly those in under-resourced communities, lack safe and beautiful public green spaces. In South Africa, urban green spaces are a visual marker of economic and racial inequality, with historically well-resourced neighborhoods having green canopies, where much of the informal settlements or low-resourced areas are barren, urban heat islands, and have very little habitat or access to green spaces. Green spaces contribute to sustainable development, both in the urban forests, the nearby forests, and faraway forests. They contribute to various SDGs like clean water and sanitation, sustainable cities and communities, climate action, life on land. And so GreenPop's urban greening program looks at various goals regarding urban green spaces. So we seek to improve accessibility, so both the distribution and ease of access and safety and security of urban green spaces. We work towards improving the quality of urban green spaces, which is we've defined it as the degree to which urban green spaces meet social and environmental needs. We look at the infrastructural elements and the amenities, and seek to improve the amenities and the services which promote the use of urban green spaces, as well as improve management. So the capacity to effectively manage and maintain green spaces. So before moving forward, I wanted to run through a Ecology 101 session, because this is the basis for how we work with ecosystems in general, including in the urban environment. And so ecosystems have 4 fundamental processes: energy flow, the sunlight coming from the sun being converted through photosynthesis into oxygen, into sugars, carbohydrates, and those carbohydrates are released through the roots to feed all the microbes, the bacteria, the fungi, all the microbes that make up a healthy living soil, which is the foundation of a healthy ecosystem. The nutrient cycle is another one of the 4 processes where those bacteria and fungi make minerals available from inorganic forms in the soil to the plants in exchange for those sugars. The nutrient cycles also include the gaseous exchanges of carbon, the carbon cycle, and the nitrogen cycle. There's the water cycle: evaporation, precipitation, transpiration from plant material. And the 4th ecosystem process is population dynamics, or succession. And this is what we observe when we look at a disturbed landscape or an early stage succession ecosystem. For example, after a volcano has covered the earth, we see how biology and ecosystems kind of work in an iterative approach. At first, the real hardy plants that are able to thrive in difficult conditions start to proliferate, otherwise often known as weeds. Those are the first pioneers that establish biological cycles and start photosynthesizing and start nurturing the soil food web. And this makes room for further stage succession, secondary succession, where perhaps the seeds of those grasses attract birds carrying seeds of some shrubs or some trees, and so on, until we reach a climax ecosystem, which is normally defined as one with high diversity, stratification, so different layers of the forest or the canopy, really optimizing the energy flow to make sure that all the sunlight can be captured and converted into energy that feeds the rest of the food web, from the microbes to the primary consumers and secondary consumers and so on. So we've got these 4 ecosystem processes and 6 kingdoms of life: the protista, the eubacteria, bacteria, fungi, plants, and animals. And so when working in any landscape, including the urban environment, understanding these ecosystem processes and considering how we can work and with these processes to increase the functioning of the ecosystem, the health, the vitality, the biodiversity, is something that we hold central to our approach. And part of these ecosystems are humans, although we sometimes forget that we are just a part of a bigger planetary ecosystem. Humans have different human-centered systems, like our social systems, our economic systems, and they exist within a broader cultural system, including our myths, our stories, our rituals and ceremonies. And so I think a lot of the challenges that we face at this time is because of a misperception. Often we see our ecological systems and our social systems as subsets of a economic super system, and but that, in some ways, that's inverted. And remembering that we are part of a planetary ecosystem in which everything is connected, that there's a level of interdependence, that, for example, half of our respiratory system exists outside of our bodies, in the vegetation that produces the oxygen that we need, and so on. So moving on, one of the frameworks that we like to work and apply to all of our context is this holistic design. So considering how we are affecting both the social, the cultural, the economic, and the ecological systems. And so to summarize, we take a place-based, community-centered design approach. What we learn from nature is that it's all about relationships. Different species interact with each other over time. Those interactions form relationships. Those relationships have feedback loops, and they modify the environment, and those changes in the environment once again shift how those entities behave and interact. And so learning from that interdependent worldview, we realize that it's all about relationships. Relationships shape our environments. And so one of our main approaches is to really look at how we can facilitate cross-sector collaboration, creating a regenerative future. It takes all sectors of society, government, the private sector, concerned citizens, civil society. And so finding pathways that are inclusive to all of these sectors and encourage and invite participation. GreenPop's motto is getting active and not anxious. So there's a lot that we can be worried about and anxious about, but if we're active, we can also be hopeful that a more beautiful future is possible. So we also really prioritize and value working with local champions, especially in terms of transformation of green zones, or is that spaces and environments need stewards. They need people that are invested in the space, that are inspired to participate in the management and the maintenance, or the growth and expansion of those initiatives. So we really center our approach with working with local champions, and really value and prioritize the process of building relationships with those local champions. Really trying to understand where they're at, what their challenges are, what their needs are, what the needs of the broader community are. And so stakeholder engagement is really a key aspect and an opportunity to build long-term relationships. This also helps make sure that any projects are aligned with the real needs of the community. We've seen far too many white elephant projects where loads of money are spent on something that looks good on paper, but where it actually comes into the real world and meets the community dynamics. And if there isn't that community involvement and the initiatives not aligned with the real needs of the community, then adoption, maintenance, in some cases even sabotage of the project can happen. So really prioritizing that relationship building and deep stakeholder engagement and aligning with the real needs of the community. And if you get that right, then a lot of the sustainability of the projects is taken care of, because it's meeting real needs and is adding real value to the lives of those communities. Through the implementation process, also really encouraging community involvement, employment opportunities for local labor, and really taking the implementation of any project as an opportunity to facilitate skills and knowledge transfer. We also really value and prioritize capacity building capacity in the grassroots, in the local communities, working with community leaders, working with youth, and then monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning to make sure that we're understanding the impacts of the projects, and also that data and that information helps us evaluate and refine our approach so that we can continue generating new knowledge and adapting and refining our approach. And so this next set of slides is just to take you through a few of our urban greening projects. This is in Philippi Village in Cape Town. So some of our design process, what the space looked like before and after. And what was beautiful about this garden is that, yeah, it was centered around this sculpture. Towards the center, we really focused on local endemic species. This was in an endangered vegetation type, the Cape Flats dune strandveld. And so the inner circle is 100% locally indigenous and endemic species, most of the species in that vegetation type. And so it's a little seed pod of most of the critical flora of this vegetation type that's native to the Cape Flats, and therefore also genetic and mother stock that can be propagated and used for restoration of that vegetation type. And then as we move out further from the center, the planting palette gets a bit more diverse and includes plants of cultural significance, so indigenous medicinal plants and plants that create talking points for the sharing of traditional uses of those plants, whether medicinal or in ritual, and that creates a really interesting talking point and educational model for intergenerational knowledge transfer. And I think this is such a beautiful testimonial from a community member gathered in our M&E through our community service. And it just said, sometimes with all the pressure and busy schedules of our lives, coupled with the stresses we experience and lack of space, safe spaces, the Green Zone addressed real needs within our community, because now we have a safe space where we can be at peace and take a break from everything else for just a few minutes. And I'm sure many of you can relate in how natural spaces have often provided a sanctuary when stressed, or just that regulating effect of getting out into nature. And so I've skipped through some of the others. This is a youth development center, the first in this area, Lawley in Johannesburg. And you can see the development in infrastructure, normally multifunctional. In this case, the community needs and the focus of our organization was food. And so the gardens took a food focus. And I thought this mural just encapsulates such a beautiful scene of the traditional food systems and ways of knowing and being, in contrast to this urban environment, and the importance of preserving that heritage and connection to our environments and food systems. Another example is Go Green, Go Clean, which is a really inspirational project. This is a community-led project that started cleaning up a dump site, a crime-ridden area. It was the Eskom servitude, and starting to clean it and paint murals on the walls. And when we connected and partnered, their vision was to extend this green zone. And you can see the kind of dumping. This is actually sewage from a pipe that would overflow into this area. And so this whole community was plagued by failing infrastructure and illegal dumping. And their vision for this space was to lean further into their cultural heritage and to tell the story of the first people of this country, the Khoi and the San. And so the murals that have been painted along here are literally a history book of key figures, key scenes, key moments in time that tell the story of the Khoi and San. And the gardens reflect that, focusing in on a lot of locally indigenous plants, and then also plants of cultural significance, indigenous medicinal plants, etc. And this is about a year later, once it's been more established. This was an urban farm in Durban, started by the homeless in the tented camp, as you can see in this image. This was set up as an emergency tented shelter during COVID. And there's an urban farming project that some of the residents at the shelter had initiated. It went through a few waves, and we had the honor of partnering and channeling funding to the revamping of this urban farm space. And just such a beautiful story of these individuals in really difficult circumstances that through some hard work and dedication and proactive activity gained the attention and support of various, and have now been supported to establish really a flagship demonstration of circular economy principles. They're collecting food waste from the local hotels near North Beach, composting on site, and then delivering fresh herbs and vegetables to those same hotels and restaurants. And then at the moment, we're busy with a few in Pretoria and in Alex. So most of these are just designs at this stage. But if you look at this picture to the right, we also shows some of the syntropic agroforestry lines that we're planting in the system. You'll see these tree lines with food crops, annual crops or grazing in between. And these are really high diversity, layered and high density. So we're planting actually fruit trees at less than 1 meter spacing, but that's because they're arranged in a way that the fast-growing pioneers or biomass species or grow and occupy the canopy in the early stages, and then through managed disturbance of pruning and managing the canopy and the biomass and cycling a lot of organic matter back to the soil. The long-term climax species like the pecan nut or the mango trees, which are still spaced at traditional kind of spacing, their establishment is accelerated by this high diversity and then the management and cycling of organic matter through the process, helping accelerate succession through to that climax stage. And also producing yield in what would otherwise be empty space in between the trees in the short term. Working on another, actually 2 in Alex that we're very excited. That's one's about to go into implementation and the other's about to wrap up. And yeah, to come back to the topic of urban forests, I know I focused mostly on urban greening and not urban forests, and that's because I feel like context is always so important. Despite the large amounts of benefits of urban forests and urban trees, that context of that place, that ecosystem, the native vegetation and biodiversity, the local community needs, is always a contextual relevance that informs our approach in that landscape. And so what I wanted to bring forward here is a really interesting approach to urban forests called the Miyawaki forest approach. And what you'll see here in this is that it takes an approach of planting high diversity, multi-layered. So there's a canopy layer, there's a sub-canopy layer, there's a herbaceous layer, there may be a ground cover layer. And these are stacked at high density, often more than 1 plant or tree per square meter, which is very different to what we see in traditional landscaping of planting just the species that will fill up the space in the long term at the appropriate spacing, kind of spacing plants according to the space that they'll need at maturity. But it's a very, when we actually really look at natural systems, natural forests, and we try and mimic the patterns that we see there, we see some different dynamics at play. And what I'd like to add to this is, even in this patch of high density, high diversity, through management, we can, in time, prune out or coppice and thin out these dense stands so that we are left with the long-term species that we desire. But in the process, what we've done is we've optimized photosynthesis in the short term by layering all the vegetation. We've produced a lot of biomass, which is full of energy. You just need to take a few sticks or twigs or dry grass and light it and look at the flames and the heat to get a sense of the embodied energy that's in organic matter. And that's a resource, it's a form of natural capital that can be cycled back into those ecosystem processes. And particularly in our urban environments, if you think about most of South Africa's ecology has relied on wildlife, on big herds of grazing animals, of elephant, of buffalo, and these big herds of animals had played a key function in the ecosystem to cycle organic matter, to knock over that tree, to browse it, to graze it, to eat the grasses, to inoculate them with microbes in their guts, and to distribute that microbial life, as well as the, cycling that organic matter. And so in landscapes where we don't have those ecosystem functions, in landscapes that are fully fenced and segregated, or further into, we end up with ecosystems that really need human intervention to fill those ecosystem functions. And so a big part of that is the cycling of organic matter. So thinking about what is happening to the, I don't like the term, but it's often referred to as organic waste. I would say more the organic matter, and really value that as a resource, and to look at closed loop cycles. How can that be processed and returned to the soil to build soil carbon, to increase the water holding capacity of the landscape? I think that can go a long way to mitigating a lot of climate associated risks. For example, if you increase the soil carbon by 1%, it increases the water holding capacity by 14.4 liters per square meter. So per hectare is 14,000 liters of water that landscape can hold. And so in terms of flash floods, or even water quality, or yeah, it really matters. So I'd like to, I guess, close with a few tips in terms of thinking about urban forestry or urban green spaces. Is try and look at a reference ecosystem. Try and look at how that ecosystem would be functioning naturally. Choose plants that are local and indigenous, because they have the long-term relationships with all the biodiversity, with the insects, with the birds, with the animals. And so also value diversity. Diversity is resilience. And so planting high diversity landscapes just hedges the bets in the case of a changing climate, a changing environment. As things change, some species will be better suited than others. Also for resilience against pests, for example, we're facing a massive issue in the Cape with the shottle borer beetle, an invasive beetle that's really threatening a lot of the interesting exotic trees, but a lot of the trees that make up Cape Town's green suburbs canopy. So look at reference ecosystems, value diversity, work with the 4 ecosystem processes. And maybe in closing, if I reflect on the word regenerative, this is the Regenerative Collaboration of South Africa. I think importantly, the word regenerative is a quality of living systems. Lizard's tail drops off and it grows a new one. You cut a branch of a tree off and it grows a new one. You cut your hand and the wound heals over time. And so this is it's not an idea or a concept. It's a quality of living systems. And so in order to create a regenerative culture, a regenerative society or a regenerative built environment, we really need to be looking at them as living systems and understanding how we can play our part as keystone species within that environment. Remembering that we are a part of the ecosystem and that we have the ability to form symbiotic relationships. So a contemplation that I can leave you with is, what is your personal relationship to the six kingdoms of life? How are you giving and receiving to the soil, to the plants, to the fungi, to the animals? What is your personal relationship, and what opportunities do you have to enhance the symbiosis in those relationships for them to be win-win relationships? And so with that, I will stop sharing my screen. And
thanks, Chris. That was very interesting, and thank you for leaving us with that contemplation and sharing all your stories with us. That was really, really impressive. Just in terms of time, I'm gonna hand over to Ash.
Thank you, Marlos. Good afternoon, and thank you for everyone here today. I truly appreciate the opportunity to share this space with you. I'm a plant installation artist and a sustainability specialist at Joburg ESG Agency. Joburg ESG Agency is a creative environmental solutions partner. We integrate horticulture, design, and sustainability to transform environments and communicate sustainability. Our focus areas, please go to the next slide. Yes, our focus areas are rooftop food gardens that help social housing companies to implement meaningful tenant support services through food security. We also focus on office plants and interior landscaping for commercial properties using carbon sink plants. Carbon sink plants are a green technology that uses a curated selection of species known for their highly carbon emission absorption. For example, our famous spec bomb plant and a couple of others. These improve air quality, reduce heat, restore biodiversity, and with them, we're able to deliver measurable ESG outcomes. Why farming matters? That's going to be my focus today. Farming matters because of ecological restoration. Concrete-dominated buildings lack biodiversity. Climate change contributes to extreme heat, pollution, and water scarcity. Food security. Local farming cuts carbon emissions and gives community access to highly nutritious food. And also, communities need space that restores or improves mental health and create jobs, like a third space. Our impact pillars are food security and community development. We focus on skills transfer and access to fresh produce. Climate action and carbon reduction, using carbon sink plants to improve air quality by reducing pollutants from the atmosphere. Sustainable design. Remember, carbon sink plants highly absorb pollutants and emissions. Because of time, I'm gonna go to the focus, to the case studies. So with the case studies, the Lane Food Gardens were part of a program that we collaborated with a social housing company called Johannesburg Housing Company. So we saw that normally the lanes are used as dumping sites between buildings in Hillbrow. So we had a program where we cleaned up the lanes and created a third space and turned it into a productive space. And also by putting a food garden between the lanes, we managed to get a community buy-in because they were now able to see the space not only as a place to to dump or throw things out of their windows, but as a useful space to produce food and reduce carbon emissions. And then we continued from the lanes, we moved to the rooftop gardens. So with the rooftop food gardens, we initiated a first rooftop garden in 2013 in Tower Hill, one of the buildings of Johannesburg Housing Company. So these spaces, they reduce heat and cooling expenses. You can imagine people in the inner city, it's mostly low-cost housing, and they might not have access to air conditioners, and having such a rooftop turned into a green space that can produce food can reduce the cooling expenses. It supplies a fresh produce, creates jobs, and promotes entrepreneurship. And then on top of reducing heat, the tenants are able to generate an income. In an instance, we did a food garden for Joshko, and one of our main reasons for setting up that food garden was because we wanted tenants to have an opportunity to implement or generate an income in case they are running behind on rental areas. This was one of the interesting installation of a food garden. So we located an empty space in a place in GP. I think it's on the outskirts of Johannesburg, of the inner city. And that was an empty space. And we targeted women over 55. So it was quite an interesting collaboration where they were mentoring younger generation with indigenous knowledge and also empowering them, the women, to, when they decide to go back home to their villages, because to retire, they've learned a skill of being able to grow their own food garden. While we were doing this, an idea of actually formalizing the interaction between the older generation and the younger generation then came the Sprouts Gardening Club. That's going to be on the second slide. So with this initiative, we saw the interest of kids in the buildings that we were working on with the social property companies. And we created this space where kids learn to grow food and understand nature. The Garden Club builds teamwork, responsibility, and stimulates the interest of nature in the kids living in the inner city. You can imagine being in a concrete-dominated space and with little bits of nature, what that type of space does to the minds of the children in the building. We also have grown the Sprouts Food Garden Club for kids into schools, where the food gardens becomes a science lab for the under-equipped public schools. These gardens support school feeding schemes as well. So not only sorry, I'm seeing the responses, they're getting me excited. Yes. So kids are able to use those spaces to learn science and biology and understand nature, and also promote exposure to green economy jobs for the kids in the schools. And then please go to the next slide. Yes. So also, like, it's very important that children are exposed to greenery at a young age, because we all belong to nature and nature is a part of us. Yes. And then to the next slide. One of our case studies is interior landscaping. We realize that the well-being and productivity in office spaces is very important, and also to improve the air quality, because you can imagine most offices are in a very urbanized environment, and a lot of pollutants, and also trying to mitigate extreme heat by putting in the plants inside people's offices. We also collaborate with brands, mainly to demonstrate a company's commitment to ESG and to communicate sustainability. The first one with Hisense is very exciting. We did it at Mall of Africa, where where Hisense collaborated with Joburg ESG agency to communicate how technology is inspired by nature. We did it for DJI Spark, Timorol, and the Nike Wellness Festival. We made sure that we created living installations that create memorable brand experiences and attract attention. And also their visual way of storytelling a company's values in sustainability, innovation, and wellness. So we did a couple of events, a NSDC music video, the awards, the Arts and Culture Awards last year. We did an indoor installation for an artist, Zandile Shabalala, where we turned the whole gallery into a tropical environment. Yeah. So this is my favorite part because it's part of what we stand for as Joburg Ash ESG agency. So this is our ESG framework. So in case you want to collaborate with our company to communicate sustainability and to show your commitment in ESG. So with environmental, we focus on the carbon sink technology. So the carbon sink technology, you are able to reduce carbon emissions. Let's say you are a company that has to pay carbon tax because of the SDG goals and the laws and compliance. Then you can come to us, and then we can develop a project or a program that can help you offset your carbon tax by creating a methodology that reduces air quality and cuts down your carbon emissions. And then you go to the social aspect. The social aspect is the community development, where we're using food gardens and food security as a tool to empower communities and to promote entrepreneurship within the community. And then with the governance, remember, companies need us to be able to show them what we have coined a return on impact. So when a company collaborates with us, we need to then give them measurable ESG outcomes. For example, Joshco will put money, or Hisense will put money into a food garden or a carbon sink rooftop farm. So we have to show them that how many bunches of spinach have we produced and how much carbon emissions have we reduced. So there's a couple of air quality monitoring stations within South Africa done by the Department of Environmental Affairs. So we're able to give the companies a baseline. I'm talking to the governance, the transparent reporting that we give our clients. So we are able to first, before we install the food garden or a living installation there, we're able to give the companies a baseline to say, this is where the pollutants, this is the amount of pollution that is existing now. And then we install the green space. And then after a few months or 6 to 8 months, we come back and we calculate again. Then they're able to see the difference and of the impact of our installation. And then on conclusion, with our areas of focus, we are looking for partners and more collaborations to continue transforming underutilized rooftops with us, to integrate a carbon sink technology to improve air quality, to empower tenants and schools with food gardens, and to create jobs. I will thank you, and I will say, let's collaborate better together. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ash. You still have time. You can keep on talking. We're all inspired by you.
I can keep on talking. Okay. Okay. I saw the time. I enjoy questions more.
Okay, let's do questions. That's fine.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask a question for both of you. So it's super inspiring, both the projects that you guys have been working on, and there's a lot around you know, what Chris was mentioning, like designing with the needs for the community, and Ash, you were also emphasizing that. So when you do these projects, how do you hand them over to the community? Do you stay involved with these projects, or do you like design a program as such that the community or the the organization is able to maintain it themselves. And I want to hear from both of you.
Okay.
After you.
Okay, can I go first? Okay. So with us, when we started the Josie Food Farmer project, that was one of the most important observations that we saw with projects trying to get community buy-in. So we create systems, and we are specialists in getting the community involved. So what we do when we approach a client, let's say Astron Energy, they want to impact a community, local community in Cape Town community. So what we do, we first have meetings of engagement with the community, and then we get to access what is it that they want, what type of foods that they want, that they consume, and then we get a community buy-in before implementation. So they feel involved. They feel like it's their idea. And then what we specialize in is making sure that they see the value outside just consuming the nutritious food, by showing them that they can generate an income. Like I forgot to mention one of our projects in the inner city, a guy by the name George. He was part of a food garden project there. He managed to quit his job and focus on producing chomolia for the community in a particular building. So we're able to create systems that enable the community to see value beyond being given a food garden, and they run on their own. Today, all the food gardens that we have implemented, I can make a tour and we can go and visit these food gardens. They are still thriving and they are continuing. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I can just echo the same sentiment that community buy-in is so important. And that's really established through relationships, and through that engagement, and through really integrating their input, right? Like not just doing it for the sake of a tick box, but really allowing that input and that feedback to inform design, the way that it's implemented. And when people feel a part of it, that their perspective, their needs, is all entwined in the project, then there's strong motivation to continue. There is, I think, a challenge in terms of the economic viability and sustainability of projects, and often in cases people may be involved so long as there's not a better opportunity, but if another opportunity comes along where they can earn more money, then it's a challenge. So our approach to that has been to partner with the organization for a time frame. In our urban greening program, a lot of the designs and projects that I showed you, that's a 2-year partnership program, and in those 2 years there's mentorship, there's capacity building. So we also work with our partnering organizations to increase the sustainability and impact of their organizations, their capacity to raise funds independently. Yeah, and I think a lot of it's also dependent on the scope of funding. So I think kind of project developers, in a sense, have a responsibility to emphasize that long-term sustainability and investment into the organizations. When I say the scope of funding is like interesting, and the type of funding is also a factor. So, for example, in this case, we had funding that could sustain that partnership for 2 years. And there wasn't necessarily funding for operational kind of elements of our partnering organizations, other than some maintenance budget. So it really was only suited to organizations that had a bit of a track record, that they were operational, that been around for some time, they were dedicated to their cause, and so there's some inherent kind of legs and can build from it. In a different scenario with more funding, then early stage startup kind of organizations that are still in the idea phase or the planning phase, there's a different development pathway for them. They may need longer time periods of support or mentorship, etc. But I think in all of our projects, trying to establish a clear enterprise model for the long-term sustainability is key. So whether that's in the case of food, then that's an obvious kind of agricultural enterprise of being able to sell the produce and achieve sustainability in that regard. When it's not food focused, it's sometimes less clear what that enterprise model is. We've had success with community-based nurseries, particularly if we can tie them into supply chains. So, for example, some of our projects establish community-based nurseries, are able to propagate plants from what's established, and then we can incubate that enterprise somewhat, for example, through buying plants from them for our corporate planting days, for example, while trying to help them establish other markets and other customer base. In general, in public spaces are challenging in the sense that there's a kind of a cultural mindset that it's government's problem, right? That somebody else has a mandate and a responsibility and is receiving funds, and people are paying taxes towards that. And so I think a lot of our work as well in terms of the GreenPop brand is also around promoting active citizenship, right? To get out of it's somebody else's problems mindset, and really working on the cultural level, like in the how we go about it in our events, in public engagement, really trying to build a culture of active citizenship, of environmental stewardship. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Absolutely, thanks. So would you say that most of the projects that you're doing, like the food gardens, and I mean, I know GreenPop is a donor funded organization, but would there be sort of business cases for doing these things commercially, or would it always have to be donor funded operations?
Okay, so with us as Joburg Ash ESG agency, we are a private company. So we saw an opportunity for companies wanting to communicate and show their ESG commitments. So previously it was known as a corporate social responsibility, but now that's now changing into ESG reporting. So we saw that companies want to impact communities, and we saw a business opportunity where we are going to approach this and give companies return on impact. We're able to say this project, for maybe a project that was funded for R1 million, we're able to say that for that R1 million, these are the number of people that you have attached. This is how much produce you have produced, and this is how much air quality and extreme heat mitigation. So it's all about sustainability. Companies wanting to channel their funds into sustainable and carbon offsetting projects. That's what we do. So it's not really donor funded. So we're able to maybe look at a company's ESG policy, and then we're able to develop a program that will align to what the companies wants to achieve in ESG.
Yeah, and I really liked your way of saying like return on impact, not necessarily return on investment.
Yes.
I like that. Okay, Chris, I'm going to give you an opportunity, but I'm going to give Tumelo to share her. Oh, we've got 3 questions. Yay. Okay, Tumelo first.
Okay, so I have a question for both speakers, and I wanted to know, in terms of how do you measure the impact of the food gardens, specifically on you guys are working mostly in spaces where it's a social impact, where people are wanting to either lower their cost or increase their accessibility to food. So I just want to know, like, my question is, how do you, in terms of them still growing, like growing their foods, either on rooftops or on a local community garden, are they still having to depend on like buying food still from the local grocer, like you can pay in your ShopRite and Woolworths, or can they fully depend on the community garden within the communities that you guys have helped develop?
So measuring impact, I think, is contextual to the goals of the funder, what their objectives are, and that would inform what the aspects of the initiative and how and what is measured. In terms of social impact, we've got some frameworks that are using qualitative data, for example, doing community surveys and understanding what impact it has had on their lives. For example, in their behavioral patterns, are they frequenting the site more often? Are they do they feel like it's adding value to the community, or what type of value that is? If there's an enhanced sense of pride of place, or whether it's been used for community gatherings or community meetings. So we work with both qualitative and quantitative data. So in terms of food gardens, it may be measuring the soil health and some of the soil indicators. It may be in terms of the number of plants or the number of the amount of species or biodiversity established through the project. It may be measuring the amount of yield that comes from the garden, etc. The economic value of that yield or that production. And so, yeah, across monitoring kind of biophysical sets of data, and then also qualitative data through surveys, and both with partnering organizations and then community members that make use of the space. Or in general, food systems are quite complex, so I don't think that many individual projects then supply 100% of the food requirements to their community. People normally have diverse sources of their food from the shops, from the farmer, depending on what's available, what's seasonal. So I don't think it's necessarily a key objective to reach 100% self-sufficiency from that garden, or but I do think that having a network of producers and a network of gardens and urban farms that are making use of empty spaces and using them productively all adds to food security. If there's a problem on one farm, for example, water gets cut off, or that area, the municipal supply fails, right? We need others in other areas that are not affected by that challenge, or a particular pest. Or so I think the decentralized network of producers is what really contributes to resilience, and also food sovereignty, having access to seed, to knowledge, to practices. It's a collective effort, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that network of gardens. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
And okay, and then with us, we focus a lot on record keeping. So we keep attendance registers in the buildings where the food garden is there. So we see how many people are attending the food garden, how often. We also record the quantity that is produced. So whether a food garden member goes to the food garden to harvest for own consumption, they have to report and say, today I harvested 7 bunches of spinach for own consumption. If the food garden member harvests 10 bunches of spinach, they have to sell to other tenants. They record that today I harvested 10 harvests of spinach and I was charging 15 Rand a bunch. That's 150 Rand. So we focus on record keeping. And that's how we measure the impact of this food garden. To answer the question of, is it sustainable to feed the whole building? That's when we create systems that make it easier for a client like Johannesburg Housing Company, which has over 40 buildings within the inner city, Newtown, Hillbrow, Marshalltown, to say, let's get in and let's put in more money and have 20 of our buildings have a food garden. So that's how we are able to say that, and we then specialize to say, you in this garden in Newtown, you specialize in chomolia. You in this garden, you specialize in spinach. I think you saw one of my pictures in the presentation that the whole food garden was just spinach. Then you are able to produce more. Because of my background as a 3rd generation farmer, I'm able to focus on making the food gardens very productive and increasing yield, and also focusing on high yield foods that the tenants consume. So we measure impact in that manner. That's how we're able to report to our clients.
Great.
Thank you.
Go for it, Elaine.
Yes, okay, I'm Helene, I'm based in Cape Town, and I sort of had 2 questions, but they're sort of overlapping. So I think my interest also in this whole story of planting and ecosystems has to do with water and energy, and how the projects manage to access clean water that is also affordable, and how that is managed through the whole growing and harvesting and managing the garden processes, and also any energy sources that one might need in terms of irrigation or lighting or who knows what, and how that is accessed. So that's one part of it. And then secondly, especially in Cape Town and the Cape Flats, and we saw that one example from Philippi, and where there's many parts of it are dunes and wetlands, and all of these environments face intense urbanization pressures, as well as pollution and of the water and the soils, and also just by our location along the ocean, wind and very dry weather, either too much water or too little, is a big kind of natural challenge to face. And also that the sandy soils actually are best suited to the indigenous vegetation, and it's very difficult to grow a food garden or any other kind of so one has to really work with the ecosystems, and I know that some of the projects that I've become aware of is looking at how to restore traditional knowledge about indigenous plants in terms of their food value or other economical uses for them. I know the Sustainability Institute at Stellenbosch is working on some of those projects. But anyway, there you go. So those were just some of my big questions as to how one would approach.
Thanks, Elaine. Just in terms of time, can we have both of you answer the questions fairly short and concise?
Sure. So, yeah, maybe I'll jump in with some experience down in the Cape. In terms of water and energy requirements, I mean, the primary source of energy is the sun, and the primary source of water is the rain. So looking at how the landscape catches and distributes and stores sunlight and water is the starting point. And then secondary to that is like, what are the other water systems? Is there municipal water supply? Is that still in process? So it's really about assessing the site-specific conditions and generating the best plan that tries to optimize the natural resources and also tap into the other resources, whether it's municipal water or electricity or knowledge or support inputs, etc. So yeah, it's always, for me at least, it's always contextual and place-based. There's no one size fits all. It's working with what you have and what the next steps are to build systems that are resilient and can support the project.
Great. Thanks. Ash, from your side?
Yes, Helen, I've got a plant for you called Barberton Daisy. So this is one of the plants that we use in Mogalakwena, which is a mining town where there's a lot of soil contamination because of the mining activity. So we did a carbon sink project in that area, and then we took a plant, the plant that I just mentioned, Barberton Daisy, that is known, it's a carbon sink plant that is known for its abilities of removing pollutants from the soil. So if you have such an environment, you can introduce that plant. It grows with barely less water. It survives. It's a very strong plant. And then it helps with the pollution. And then when it comes to water and energy, in all our food garden systems, we always incorporate rainwater harvesting. And then we use solar energy to run our pumps. And then in extreme instances of water scarcity, like that we've been seeing now in Johannesburg, our hydroponics is inspired by what is called the Dutch bucket. So we keep we set up the hydroponics by just keeping water in a closed bucket where there's no pumps running, and then you just put the GFs and the net caps, and then the plants will just grow with the water in that bucket. That way we're able to not depend on the availability of water. So we always coming up with innovation and taking from other areas. Remember, with growth, you need to be always learning and researching and looking at what people are doing in China, what people are doing in Europe. That's even my own story of being in Malaysia. That's when I saw the urban farming and how you need to be solution orientated and face on the challenges. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys. Oh, there's Adrian.
Marloes, now all I want to do, I just want to make contact with Joburg Ash, because what we're doing here is we're slotting beautifully with him. I just want to know whether there's an ESG website. How can I?
He doesn't have a website, but we did share his details in the chat box. And if you don't come right, you can always email us, and then we'll put you in touch with you. But Ash, maybe put your cell phone number and your email and everybody and all your details.
Okay.
And same for Chris, how much you want to share.
Yes.
Put it in the chat box so that people can contact you guys. I do in the we have to wrap up now because I don't want to waste people's time.
Yes.
And I see people dropping off already. So I'll check before I switch off the meeting with you, Adrian, if you found the details. But very quickly, next month, we haven't finalized the webinar yet, but we're gonna showcase at least one project that I'm wanting to showcase for a long time, which is the Witklippenrivier Lodge, which is completely built with like 5 different types of building with earth methodologies. So that's really exciting. So we've got that one confirmed, and I'm still looking for a second project. So if you have any ideas, please let us know. And then I just want to say thank you for sponsoring and making this webinar possible. Big thank you to Joburg Ash ESG Agency, Tumelo. Really
thank you. Thank you.
And then to both our speakers, Christopher and Tumelo, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Amazing projects, really inspirational. And it's so good to see that these food gardens are taking off Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you for your time, for sharing your experience with us. Really, really appreciate that. Last call out there. I'm just putting it in the universe every time I'm doing a webinar. If you know somebody that wants to become a sponsor of our 2026 program, please let us know. We have options if you want to do just one or like 6 at a time or all 12. Please let us know. Or if you know somebody that has a lot of money lying around, we can send a sponsorship brochure to you guys. And yeah, help us find people that want to sponsor so that we can continue in 2026. And if you don't have money, just use your likes and subscribe abilities to link to any of our platforms. It does really help us to find our sponsorship. So yeah, if you can't help us with money, just give us a thumbs up on any of our socials. And with that, I'm going to say thank you for attending. I'm really pleased with so many people attending. I know it's the day after the public holiday, and I know it's the LISA conference, so you probably had a lot of presentations already. But thank you for attending. Thank you to our speakers, and thank you to our sponsor. And have a great evening, guys. And see you next month. See you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.